Hello everyone. Welcome back to Talkish English channel. I'm really happy you're here because today's topic is something so many people ask about. How to master English at home. And honestly, this topic is super personal to me because I actually learned most of my English from home, not from a fancy school.
Hi everyone. Welcome back. Yes, this is such a good topic. And I agree with Alex. So many of us didn't grow up in an English-speaking environment. So we had to figure things out on our own. Today, we want to share everything we did. What worked, what failed, what took forever, and what finally helped us speak naturally and confidently.
Right. And what I like is that our methods were similar in some ways but also totally different in others. So people watching can choose what fits their lifestyle. For me, I think the first big change was when I realized I didn't need to memorize grammar books or study for hours. I just needed consistency, like 20 to 30 minutes every day.
Exactly. People always think they need to study like 5 hours a day or they'll never improve. But that's so far from the truth. What really matters is that English becomes part of your daily routine. And for me, that started with changing everything on my phone into English. My apps, my Netflix, my YouTube, even my Google searches.
Yes, that's such a simple but powerful trick. When you surround yourself with English, you stop studying English and start living with English. For example, I used to read simple articles about things I liked: fashion, food, travel, anything. And even though I didn't understand every word, it still helped me learn naturally.
Oh my gosh. Same. But for me, the game changer was shadowing. Like, I watched a lot of English videos and I repeated after the speakers. Not perfectly, not quickly, but just copying their rhythm, their pronunciation, even the little pauses they made. It felt so awkward at first, but after a few weeks, my speaking fluency completely changed.
Shadowing is amazing. It's like exercising your speaking muscles. And you're right. It feels weird in the beginning. I remember locking myself in my room because I didn't want anyone to hear me talking to myself like a crazy person.
Ha ha ha, yes. And the best thing is, you don't need to talk all day. Just 10 or 15 minutes of shadowing daily can make a huge difference. When you repeat natural English, your brain starts to adopt the patterns without you even trying.
Something else that helped me was keeping an English journal. Not a beautiful diary. Not something poetic. Just simple sentences about my day. And at first it was extremely basic. Like, today I woke up early. I ate breakfast. I went to work. But later I started writing more details. More feelings. More thoughts.
That's such a good tip. I did something similar but with voice notes. Every night I recorded myself talking for 2 or 3 minutes about my day. My thoughts. My plans. And then later, when I listened again, I could hear my mistakes, my pronunciation problems, and how I improved over time. It's like my own progress documentary.
I love that. And recording yourself is so reflective. You hear your strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes you realize, wow, I sounded better than I thought. Quote.
True. And another thing I always tell learners is, don't be afraid of mistakes. I made so many, like, embarrassing ones. But if I didn't make mistakes, I would never improve. My English only got better because I used it, even when I wasn't confident.
Yes, yes, yes. Confidence doesn't come before speaking. It comes from speaking. When I tried to be perfect before talking, I stayed quiet for years. But when I accepted that mistakes are normal, I finally started to progress.
And something important too is choosing fun content. If you hate what you're learning from, You won't stick to it. For example, I love crime documentaries, so I watched those in English. Someone else might like cooking shows or podcasts about motivation. Anything is fine as long as it keeps you interested.
That's so true. People think they must study with textbooks. But actually, TV shows, YouTube channels, TikTok clips, songs, everything counts. Learning should feel enjoyable.
Speaking of songs, music actually helped me so much. I used to listen to English songs with lyrics and sing along. It taught me pronunciation, rhythm, and vocabulary in a really fun way.
Oh yes, music is powerful. And for me, another big thing was trying to think in English. Not all day, just little moments. Like when I brushed my teeth, I'd think, okay, what time is it? What do I need to do today? It trained my brain to produce English without translating.
Thinking in English is such an advanced sounding technique. But it's actually simple. You start with tiny thoughts. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I like this. And soon it becomes automatic.
And once that happens, your speaking becomes much smoother. No more translating. No more awkward pauses.
Another thing I want to mention is online communities. I joined English groups on Facebook and Telegram where people practiced together. I wasn't super active, but even reading other people's conversations helped.
Yes, and the internet makes everything easier now. You can practice with strangers, find study partners, use free apps. There's no limit.
But the most important thing, honestly, is patience. English takes time. Everyone wants to be fluent in 3 months. But real fluency comes from small, consistent habits over many months or years.
Exactly. And every little step counts. Watching a video, learning a phrase, writing one sentence. These small actions become big progress.
So if you're watching this, remember, you don't need to move abroad. You don't need expensive classes. You can master English right where you are, with the resources you already have.
And we're here to help you along the way. Talkish English channel is basically your friend on this journey.
Yes, so keep practicing, keep watching, and keep believing in yourself.
Thank you for joining us today.
And we'll see you in the next conversation. Bye everyone.
You know, Emma, something I realized later in my journey was that learning English at home doesn't mean being isolated. At first, I thought studying alone meant I had to do everything by myself. Videos alone, listening alone, reading alone, everything alone. But then I discovered that even if you're physically alone, you can still connect with English speakers all over the world. Sometimes I didn't even talk. I just observed conversations on forums or watched people debate on YouTube. And from that alone, I learned natural expressions that no textbook ever taught me. It helped me understand the way real people communicate. Their tone, humor, sarcasm, even filler words like literally, basically, you know, and I mean. Those little details made a huge difference in sounding natural.
I completely understand that. I used to do the same thing. I would watch comment sections on videos or join online communities. But I wouldn't participate at first because I was too shy. I just wanted to feel how English speakers actually interact with each other. And it was in those moments that I realized English isn't just a language. It's a culture. The way people joke, the way they express frustration, the way they comfort each other. Those things don't show up in grammar books. And honestly, that kind of exposure helped me improve way more than memorizing verb tenses ever did. I learned phrases like, I feel you, no worries, it is what it is, oh, come on, or, you've got to be kidding me. Things we use every day but no one teaches formally.
Yes, And it's funny how we sometimes underestimate the power of just listening. When I was younger, I used to play English podcasts while doing chores. Even if I didn't pay full attention, my brain was absorbing patterns. And months later, I suddenly realized, wait, I understand more now. It was like magic. That's why I always tell learners, don't try to understand every single word. Let the language flow into your ears. The brain is smart. It picks up patterns naturally if you give it enough exposure.
That's such a good point. I did something similar whenever I cooked or cleaned. I'd play English interviews or conversations in the background, especially ones about topics I liked, like psychology or lifestyle. And even if I understood only 40%, that 40% slowly became 50, then 60, then almost everything. Sometimes learning happens quietly without you noticing. That's why consistency is everything. 1 hour a week won't help much, but 10 minutes a day for months can completely transform your English.
Exactly. And I think another thing we should talk about is fear. Because fear stops so many people from improving. I used to be terrified of speaking. I always worried people would laugh at my accent or judge my grammar. I still remember one time when I tried speaking to a tourist. And I froze because I couldn't remember a simple word. It felt so embarrassing that I avoided speaking for months after that.
Oh no, I've been there too. I had this one moment where I wanted to order something in English at a cafe because the staff didn't speak my language, and I was shaking the whole time. My voice cracked. I mixed past and present tense like 5 times. And afterward, I replayed the moment in my head for days, feeling like I had failed. But looking back, that was one of the moments that helped me grow the most. Every awkward moment becomes a little scar, but those scars are proof that you're getting better.
That's beautiful. And I wish more learners understood that mistakes are not the enemy. They're part of the process. Every fluent speaker you see today has a past full of mistakes, embarrassing moments, and confusing interactions. Nobody becomes fluent by being perfect. You become fluent by trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the ways I overcame fear was by practicing speaking alone, but out loud. Some people think speaking alone is weird, but it helped me so much. I would walk around my room pretending to argue with someone, or explain something, or tell a story, and weirdly, it built my confidence because I got used to hearing my own voice in English.
Oh yes, I did that too. I used to narrate things I did. Okay, now I'm making coffee, or I need to reply to that email. It sounded silly, but it trained my mouth to move in English. And that made me so much more confident when I spoke to real people. And you know what's even funnier? Sometimes I made my cat my English listener. I'd sit there telling her about my day like she understood. She didn't, of course, but talking still helped.
That's adorable. And honestly, animals are great listeners. They don't judge your accent. But you know what really pushed my speaking to the next level? Finding someone online to practice with once or twice a week. Not a teacher, just a partner. The conversations weren't perfect. Sometimes we both forgot words. Sometimes we mixed 2 languages together. But the important thing was that we used English in real communication, not just in theory.
That's so true. Real conversations force you to think on your feet. They also make English feel alive. And you don't even need many partners. Just one person you feel comfortable with can make a huge difference. I remember one partner I had from Brazil. We practiced for months. And because she wasn't a native speaker either, I didn't feel judged. We were both learning and growing together.
That's the beauty of learning online. You meet people who understand your struggles because they're going through the same thing. And you know what else I learned? Sometimes progress happens when you stop obsessing about it. When I relaxed and enjoyed English instead of pushing myself too hard, I actually improved faster. It's like the mind opens up when pressure disappears.
Yes, it becomes natural instead of forced. And to be honest, that's the whole secret of mastering English at home. You make English part of your life. Not a burden, not a chore. Something fun, something meaningful, something that helps you grow as a person. And once you fall in love with the process, fluency becomes a side effect.
I love that so much. And I hope everyone watching feels encouraged. Whether you're learning in your bedroom, your kitchen, your workplace, or even on your bus ride, remember, these small moments add up. And one day, you'll look back and realize how far you've come.
Absolutely. And we're here to support you every step of the way. That's what Talkish English channel is all about.
Yes. So keep watching, keep practicing, keep smiling, and don't give up.
You know, Emma, something we haven't talked about yet, but I think is probably one of the most important parts of mastering English at home, is the mindset behind the whole journey. Because honestly, if your mindset is wrong, everything becomes harder. You start comparing yourself to others. You get frustrated. You think you're not improving fast enough? And then you feel like giving up. I've been through that. And I remember feeling so discouraged whenever I saw someone speak fluently while I was still stuck, searching for words. But later, I realized that comparing my English to someone else's English is like comparing my chapter 1 to their chapter 20. Everyone moves at a different pace. And there's nothing wrong with that. The moment I stopped comparing myself, learning became lighter, more enjoyable, and, funny enough, I started improving faster.
Yes, that's such a powerful point. When I first started learning, I had this unrealistic expectation that I should sound perfect. I thought being fluent meant never hesitating, never mispronouncing anything, never forgetting a word. But then I met native speakers who also hesitated, paused, used filler sounds, or forgot words. And I thought, wait, even native speakers struggle sometimes. So why am I being so hard on myself? That realization changed everything. I became kinder to myself. I allowed myself to make mistakes. I allowed myself to speak imperfectly. And you know what's funny? After I stopped obsessing over perfection, my speaking became smoother and more confident, almost naturally.
Exactly. And it's the same with habits. Many people think they need to study for hours every day to improve. But that's not true. Long study sessions are great, but they're not sustainable for everyone. What matters is consistency. Even 15 minutes a day, but done consistently for months, will beat 5-hour sessions that only happen once every few weeks. When I started creating small daily habits, like listening to a podcast while brushing my teeth, reading 5 pages of an English book before bed, or practicing speaking for 10 minutes every morning, I began noticing real progress. And because these habits were small, I never felt overwhelmed.
That's so true. For me, I built what I call English corners in my daily life. For example, my phone was in English. My playlists were in English. My captions on social media were in English. I didn't force myself to sit down with a textbook every day. Instead, I made English appear naturally throughout my routine. So even on busy days, I still had exposure. And the beautiful part is that these tiny touches of English trained my brain subconsciously. I wasn't even aware of how much I was learning until one day. Everything started feeling easier. Listening, speaking, reading, even thinking.
That's such a smart approach. And speaking of listening, I think a lot of learners misunderstand what listening practice actually means. Many people think listening practice is only listening to things you fully understand. But the reality is, if you only listen to things you understand 100%, you'll never grow. You need a little challenge. Not too hard that you feel lost, but just challenging enough that your brain keeps absorbing new patterns. In my case, I used to listen to interviews or discussions that felt slightly above my level. At first, it felt overwhelming. But over time, I started recognizing the same expressions again and again. It felt like discovering pieces of a puzzle. And eventually the picture became clearer.
I agree. And I always tell learners, don't panic if you don't understand everything. Listening isn't about catching every word. It's about catching meaning. You can still understand the message even if you miss 30 or 40% of the vocabulary. Listening is like lifting weights. The more you practice, the stronger your listening muscles become. And one tip that helped me a lot was shadowing. Listening to something and then repeating it instantly. Copying the pronunciation, rhythm, and tone. I remember shadowing movie scenes for weeks. It was embarrassing at first, but it trained my mouth to move in a natural way, and I could feel my speaking improving dramatically.
Shadowing was a game changer for me too. I used to watch movie scenes with subtitles, then without subtitles. Then I'd pause and mimic the actor's voice. I didn't care if I sounded silly. I focused on matching their tone, speed, and emotion. And after doing it long enough, something magical happened. I started speaking with more flow and fewer pauses. My sentences became longer, smoother, more automatic. It was like the language installed itself into my muscle memory.
Yes. And speaking of muscle memory, we should talk about building speaking reflexes because learners often struggle with that. They say, I can understand, but I can't speak. And I totally get that because speaking requires instant decision making. You don't have time to translate from your native language. But the more you practice speaking, even with yourself, the more automatic it becomes. I used to sit in front of the mirror and practice expressions like, let me think, what I mean is, that's a great question, or, can you repeat that? Those phrases became my safety net. Whenever I forgot a word during real conversations, I used them to buy time while thinking. That way, I stayed confident instead of freezing.
Exactly. And translation is one of the biggest roadblocks. At some point, you need to switch from translating to thinking directly in English. But that shift doesn't happen magically. It happens when you expose yourself to English every day. I remember the first time I caught myself thinking in English. It was a weird moment. I was making breakfast, and suddenly my brain said, "Don't forget to add salt." And I thought, whoa, I just talked to myself in English without trying. That was the moment I realized fluency starts in the mind, not the mouth.
I love that. And another thing I want to mention is the importance of enjoying the process rather than chasing perfection. When I treated English like homework, I improved slowly. But when I treated it like a hobby, watching English vlogs, listening to English music, writing English diaries, I felt happier and more motivated. Learning became something I looked forward to instead of something I had to force myself to do.
Yes. Enjoyment is everything. When you enjoy something, your brain absorbs more. That's why I always tell learners, pick content you genuinely love. If you hate business topics, don't listen to business podcasts. If you love cooking, listen to cooking shows in English. If you love travel, watch travel vlogs. Learning through the things you love is the fastest, easiest, and most natural way to improve.
And you know what else is important? Celebrating small wins. Sometimes we only focus on what we can't do and forget how much we've already achieved. When I finally watched my first movie without subtitles. Even though I didn't understand everything, I felt so proud. When I ordered food in English without overthinking, I celebrated. When I remembered a phrase I learned, I felt happy. Those small victories kept me motivated for years.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great message for everyone watching. Every step counts. Every word learned. Every sentence spoken. Every video watched. They all build up. Learning English is not a race. It's a journey. And what matters most is that you keep moving forward, no matter how slow you think you're going.
So true, Alex. And to everyone watching from the Talkish English channel, keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and never underestimate the power of small daily actions. Your future fluent self is waiting for you. And trust us, you're getting closer every single day.